Thank you very much. First of all, let me express my gratitude to have the opportunity for the first time to participate to this meeting, because it's been really, I would say, interesting. It's probably not the correct word, but emotional and interesting. And also for me, that I'm considered quite an expert on the CML field. I learned a lot of things about the problems of the CML patients in different parts of the world, and this is certainly a wonderful experience that I think that from which I will get certainly a lot of benefit. So let's go to talk today about one of the future, but not so future, aim that we can have in CML therapy. What we're able to do in this period of time is just to make CML, let's say, an affordable disease in the sense that we can survive with CML, but unfortunately, in most of the cases, we have also to continue a lifelong therapy, which is expensive, which is producing, I would say, some side effects. Most of the cases, quite mild side effects, but in other cases, also important side effects. And what we do not know is that all our experience is based on the last 15 years, approximately, the longest experience that we have with TK inhibitor therapy, starting at the beginning of this millennium, and therefore it's only 15 years. And the 15 years are not 40, are not 50 years. And therefore we need, of course, to be quite prudent in trying really to consider that we have done everything that has to be done for the CML therapy. We have certainly to further improve, and I think that we have to defeat definitely the disease. And this, of course, is our aim in the next future. So let's talk about is possible really to definitely cure the disease, and the answer, fortunately enough, is yes. And we know this. These are the reasons, of course, to discontinue the therapy. And we know this from the French experience, which started only some years ago, but they reported this very important paper showing that it was possible in patients achieving a very good molecular response, a very deep molecular response, just to discontinue the therapy without observing a recurrence of the disease. And this is in this slide, you can see that approximately 100 patients who discontinued the therapy, 60% of them, and they were BCR-ABL negative when they decided to discontinue the therapy. 60% of them had, in a rather short period of time, 6 months from the discontinuation, the reappearance of the BCR-ABL transcript. But in 40% of them, approximately, there was a very stable, what we call now treatment-free remission. So which means not a reappearance of the BCR-ABL transcript, not reappearance of the sign of the traces of the disease. So let's become a little bit more familiar with the terms of definition that we are using. There are several similar definitions that we are using, like therapy cessation, therapy discontinuation, and this is easy to understand. This is what we are doing. We are stopping the treatment. Treatment-free remission is a status. It means that patients remain in a status which is really free of the disease, in which we cannot see the disease, can last for a very long period of time, months, years, and we hope indefinitely, of course. We still do not know exactly, but certainly we have a long period of holiday from the therapy, and this, of course, is certainly good also for the disease. Because where we are talking of a recurrence of the disease, it doesn't necessarily mean that the disease is reappearing, particularly if we react quite soon, or we are observing quite carefully what is going on, and therefore maybe we are restarting the therapy and so on. What is important is that the disease is again showing the presence through an increase of the BCR-ABL transcript, which becomes again detectable And this is what we call recurrence molecular relapse, but it's something not to be afraid of, because it's something which is simply meaning that the disease is still there, it can reappear, although there is no true relapse of the disease. Certainly, and what we can do, we restart the treatment in these cases. We will see that in some cases it's not even needed. And in this case, we have again a control of the disease as it was before during the therapy. So it's something, it's a process with which we should become familiar, because it's something that probably most of you sooner or later will have to experience. It's not, I would say, an easy step. It's something which requires dedication, concentration, attention, as everything, but it's something that certainly in the future we should try to achieve. There are, after the French experience, that was the first to be reported, there were many other studies just exactly pointing out the same conclusions, that it was possible to discontinue the therapy in approximately 40% of the cases. As you may see, these studies were done in Australia, in Korea, in Japan, and now also in Europe, as Suzanne after me will certainly point out. And therefore, there are many, I would say, concepts which are coming out, although nothing is really at the moment totally clear. We still do not know how we can achieve the control of the disease, because why? The disease is still there in most of the cases. It's simply no more visible, but the so-called leukemic stem cells, in most cases, are still there. We know this using very sensitive techniques. We know this using also other PCR techniques, DNA-based techniques, but I will not just underline it as technical problems. When we achieve a certain low degree of residual disease, the disease doesn't reappear. And this is really important, because although we do not know exactly which are the mechanisms which can control the disease. Certainly, in some cases, the disease is so low that even with very sensitive techniques, we cannot more detect it. And in some other patients, we know that these patients still have some leukemic cells, but the leukemic cells are not able to re-expand, are not giving origin to a full leukemia phenotypes that was present at diagnosis of the disease. And which are the mechanisms which are controlling this re-expansion of the disease at the moment are not known. We think, although at the moment is purely an hypothesis, that there are immune mechanisms which are able to suppress, or at least to keep under long-term control, the residual leukemia stem cells. And so these are biological aspects that, of course, is very important to explore and to further investigate, because we can take advantage of knowing exactly which are the mechanisms who can suppress the residual cells of the disease, even in absence of the TKI, of the therapy. Which are the prerequisites for the TKI discontinuation? Certainly, just as I told you, to have a very deep molecular response, what previously was called complete molecular response, that now we like generally to define MR4.5, which is the limit of detection, in which the BCR-ABL transcript can be seen, cannot be seen in some occasion, with a fluctuation due also to the sensitivity that we can reach in different analysis. It's a very important prerequisite. If you are stopping the disease when we are simply in major molecular response, therefore 0.1% of BCR-ABL, the disease is almost certainly reappearing. Reappearing not only because it's still there, but the cells, of course, increase. And the other point is how long is this CMR lasting? This is another very important point, and these are the data from a group of Japanese researchers. As you may see, CMR, the length of the CMR on one side is a very important parameter to distinguish those in which the disease doesn't reappear. with respect to those in which the disease will reappear. So stable and very low amount of minimal residual disease, and we can say that at least MR4, so 4 log reduction, or even better, MR4.5, 4.5 log reduction with respect to the initial amount of the disease presented diagnosis. For how long is still a question mark, but we can say that longer is better. So which are the other important aspects which can, of course, facilitate not only the achievement but the maintenance of a CMR status even after discontinuation? Certainly the initial quality of the disease. I would say, you know that we distinguish with a diagnosis several risk categories according to parameters which have been established years ago, called the so-called risk classification. As you may see that those in the low so-called risk group have the highest probability. Certainly the treatment duration, which is generally also corresponding to the achievement of very low amount of residual disease, is another important parameter coming out in most of the studies. And there are other very curious, let's say, aspects which have been in particular discovered and mentioned by the Australian group, showing that female are apparently facilitated in maintaining a CMR status with respect to the male population, as well as a very early, and these are more recent a more recent acquisition, very early achievement of a deep molecular response, which means that are those that after 3 months of therapy only are already below 1%, even lower, that have a very, very high probability of achieving later on a CMR status and therefore to be able to discontinue the therapy. Is it risky just to try to stop the therapy? No, because as I told you, even if this disease reappears and the BCR Abelson further increases and therefore we need to restart the therapy, again, the restart of the therapy is sufficient to keep the disease under control again and to achieve, in most of these cases, again, a CMR status. And this is very important. So therefore, we can say it's an attempt. And what is very important is that there is no, at the moment, we do not have a report, with only one exception probably, but this particular exception, that in my opinion is not so valid, in which there is the appearance of a resistance, of a relapse of the disease, let's say, in a more resistant, in a more advanced state. And therefore, it's sufficiently safe to be attempted on, for the moment, in investigational studies, but in the future also in common clinical practice. One other very interesting phenomenon that we have seen is that, indeed, when we are stopping therapy, in some of these cases, the disease reappears and becomes again visible, but the patients doesn't lose the MMR. So the BCR Abelson never goes up the threshold of 0.1%. And in these cases, even if after the in particular, if after the reappearance you are not restarting the therapy, the disease remains under control. And most of these cases achieve again spontaneously, without the therapy, again in CMR status. And this is a very interesting phenomenon because it means really that our body is able to take control of the leukemic clone. This percentage of patients who are behaving in this way is not so trivial. I would say is approximately 30% of the cases. Therefore, if we add to the previously 40% of the cases, this additional 30% of the cases in which there is a molecular recurrence of the disease, but which are not losing their MMR, we can achieve a discontinuation of the therapy in approximately 70% of the cases, which is an extremely high percentage. And therefore, this is becoming a really attractive endpoint just to be achieved in the therapy of CML. And let's study with, this is just a slide to remember me to say that now we have developed very, very sensitive PCR techniques which are not yet commonly used in, would say, in clinical practice, but only for research studies. And this is so-called digital PCR, which really counts the number of the molecules, of the PCR aerosol molecules in real time in an absolute manner. Therefore, we have a very precise determination of the number of the residual BCR aerosol count, which is corresponding also to the number of the residual leukemic cells. And you may see that we can achieve in this way a very high sensitivity, also 1 cells hour out of 1 million of cells. And this is, I would say, the highest limit that we can achieve, because after this point, probably we will be able to find BCR aerosol molecules even in subjects which are considered healthy, which didn't have any CML before. And therefore, this is, I would say, the limit of discrimination, really, that we can have, or the maximum sensitivity that we can usefully achieve. If these patients who discontinue, as you may see in this slide provided by the group of the Korean researcher of Dr. Duk-Woong Kim, you may see that indeed at the beginning, even if they were in the traditional methods in CMR, they were showing some residual disease. But then, even after discontinuation, this residual disease progressively went down. And this is extremely important. There is only one patient that after 5 years is still very weakly positive, or very weak positive signal, which means that, again, we do not know why, and which is why this phenomenon, but certainly the body is again able to suppress, and probably we can say also eradicate the residual leukemic cells. And this is a very important point. Another very important point is the fact that we can try to stop the therapy many times. So the fact that we are facing the first time an insuccess, which means that the disease reappears, doesn't mean that for the rest of the life the patients will have to continue to take the therapy. Because after restarting the therapy, after achieving again a CMR, it can again challenge to discontinue the therapy. At this point, you may see that approximately the same percentage, 30% of the cases, are able to maintain at this point a continuous complete remission. And this is a very important point, because it's a sort of a battle, I would say more than a battle, a war, that we are starting with CML, and that therefore just to lose a single battle is probably not enough. What we have to win is the final war, of course. Can we improve the discontinuation treatment? And this is my last point. Certainly, we know that using a stronger TK inhibitor, in this case nilotinib, we have a higher probability of achieving a stable MMR. Not only stable MMR, but also MR 4.5, and therefore CMR. And as you may see, almost double in a period of time of 5 years with respect to what we can observe with imatinib. Certainly, the strength of the TKI inhibition is one of the major aspects to be considered. And therefore, we can expect that after 5 years, approximately the double of the patients with respect to those treated with imatinib will be able to try to discontinue the treatment. And what we do not know, we have for the moment very little experience. We are waiting for the data using the second generation TKI in the next 2-3 years. There are studies ongoing at the moment. What we can say is that at the moment, for the patients who discontinue the therapy after treatment with second generation TKIs, and they apparently show the same rate of successful discontinuation as with imatinib. So the concept may be a little bit difficult to catch up, but is that once that we have achieved a certain threshold, it means that the disease is a certain degree of complexity which can indeed, of simplicity if you want on the other side, you can try to discontinue the therapy. If you are using a stronger TK inhibitor, you are achieving this goal before and in a higher percentage of patients, but the risk of relapsing remains the same, with the same level of residual disease. And this is a concept that at the moment is only suggested, is supported by some of the data that we have, but it's a very important concept. It's exactly the same concept that we have with the 10%. So in the future, I think that although we have discussed so many ideas during this meeting, and we have seen the differences that we have in the world, I think that we have to push for the final solution, which is certainly the treatment-free remission and therapy discontinuation, because this is very important for the cost, for the side effects, for really to finally, and for the quality of the life of the patients, because really to live not only without leukemia, but also without the therapy for leukemia is certainly better than to live with the therapy for leukemia. Thank you very much. My time is up, but I want to say that Suzanne will certainly continue, and she will talk about how we can further improve this possibility to discontinue the therapy.
So we have a new chair. Thank you very much. The talk is open for discussion. Any questions?
I have one question. At the time of discontinuation, what should be the protocol for monitoring?
The monitoring should be, as you have seen from one of the previous slides, the recurrence of the disease are generally very appearing in a short time, within 6 months from the start of the discontinuation. And therefore, I think that during the first 6-8 months, it would be better to perform RT-PCR analysis every 1 month, 1 month and a half. 1 month and a half should be sufficient.
For the first 7 to 8 months?
Sorry?
For the initial 6 to 8 months?
For the protocol that we have in the Euroski, and maybe Suzanne can help me, is just for the first 6 months, every 1 month and a half, and then it's becoming every 3 months during the second 6 months of the first year, and then she will show it exactly.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Thank you for that talk. It was fantastic. My question is about Abelson and the kinase activity. So when you don't have, so when you achieve a major molecular response and you can then go into the STOP program, can you give us an insight into the role of the immune system in terms of suppressing the leukemic clone? Because it blows my mind that the clone's still there and you've got Abelson activity, but it's not active, and yeah.
This is a good question. Certainly the immune system is different in different patients, therefore the reactivity of the body against the leukemic clone may be different. And we cannot exclude that there are also patients that in MMR can discontinue, and there were also examples in the past, we say an adoptable example in the literature, in which the CML clones was appearing and then disappearing. There were people, I remember that the poor John Goldman indeed was reporting some of these cases that in which there was a clear diagnosis of CML and then a spontaneous, I would say, disappearance of the clone again. And so we cannot exclude, but it's very rare. So the amount of the residual disease is clearly determining the probability of success. And the success will be, of course, when there is a very low amount, it's quite high rate of success is possible.
There's the last question.
I would like to hear your opinion about some of the feelings that we as advocates have. We always said that stopping is only within the context of a clinical trial because of the control and the monitoring. But we see on a daily basis more and more cases that patients are being stopped on one-on-one individual cases with their treating doctors. And what do you feel about that?
I think that in a short time it will become common clinical practice, I would say. This is just to be very sincere. And because now we have accumulated several experiences. Now we are discontinuing the therapy for special occasion, when the patient has some side effects or in case of pregnancy and so on. And but if in these cases indeed there is no reappearance of the disease, let's say if a woman is in a CMR, she becomes pregnant, and then after the delivery she is not, she's still in CMR. Why we have to restart the therapy at this point? We can continue. So it's becoming a rather common clinical practice. Of course, we are saying that it's not good just to do this without outside of an investigational study, because we need also to collect a lot of information, and the information can be collected only if we indeed share data, and this is very, but from the practical point of view, I think that in a rather short period of time, the number of the patients who are progressively discontinuing the therapy is increasing all over the world.